Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of Sports, Movies, and Fun. This is our sixth episode. We've done Hoosiers, Major League, League of Their Own, Remember the Titans, Jackie Robinson, and today, a great boxing movie, Cinderella Man. That came out in 2005, and basically, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a inspirational story of the true heavyweight champion of the world, James the Bulldog J. Braddock. Uh, Break down a little financials for you guys. It cost 88 million to make. Uh, it didn't really make as much money as you probably thought in the United States. It only made 61 million. So they did lose some money in the United States. They lost, what was it, 27 million, but they made it all up worldwide, which is kind of interesting considering it's really an American story and not really. I don't think there's too many people in Japan that know about James J. Braddock, but I guess you tell a great story and people are going to come and see it. And worldwide totals 108 million. So overall, I made 108 million off the 88 million that it cost to make. It was written and directed by Ron Howard. And if you know anything about Ron Howard, it's either one of those movies that are just spectacular, great movies, Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13. Those are just a couple of movies off the top of my head that are just wonderful movies. And then you got the other side of Ron Howard that you're just like, dude, you have a twin brother out there making movies, call himself Ron, because these are some really trashy movies. Uh, we'll get down to the ratings later on, but I think this was one of his on the good side. Uh, Now, as far as Academy Awards, it was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Best Supporting Actor, Paul Giamatti, who played Braddock's trainer and promoter, Joe Gould. And Paul Giamatti is just wonderful in this movie. I think this is probably one of the movies that really got him started. I would frankly just watch the movie just to watch Paul Giamatti. That's how good he is. And the other 2 nominations were Best Film Editing and Best Makeup. So little minor Academy Awards, but still 3 Academy Awards nominated. As far as when the movie begins, it sort of starts off with Braddock. He's automatically he's sort of the lightweight, heavyweight champion contender. He loses the fight to that champion at the time, Tommy Lowerhand. And then on top of that, then we start seeing him breaking down. He has a broken hand. His body's beaten down, and he's not performing to where people would draw an audience to. And because he's not drawing an audience and the fights are boring, guess what? Ticket sales are boring. They're not coming in. People want to watch. They want to watch action. They want to see 2 people beat up each other. And if one fighter can't throw with his left hand because it's weak, and then has the right hand that's broken, even though that's his strong hand and that's broken, he's become useless. And in a business world and a strict business world where money was sort of king, especially during the Depression, the promoter decides to say, adios. I'm not gonna use you as a fighter anymore. Find your own way. And he basically becomes unemployed. So he comes home to his wife. He has a wife, 3 kids or 4?
3 kids. Yeah, 3 kids.
3 kids. And obviously at the Depression time, women weren't working. So at least 99% of them weren't working. And so now he has no job, 3 kids, and a wife. I know that you sort of wanted to touch base a little bit on sort of the history and the backdrop of this movie. So why don't you go ahead and start us off with how that looks and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, I thought this is a good movie to choose because right now, we're about 90 years, past what this movie was filmed in the 1930s, but we're still in the, dire straits in America because of different reasons. So I figured, we could utilize this movie to not only kind of galvanize us and kind of get our, happiness up, because you and I talk about how these movies definitely inspire us throughout the week, because it's tough right now. If you look at social media, you go outside, everyone's wearing a mask. It's, or should be wearing a mask, pardon me. It's it's tough right now to think of a normal life And to watch a movie where life was not normal, life was an absolute crap show, and to see a success story come from the literal bottom of the barrel is quite awesome. Just a little bit on the actual movie, Russell Crowe hurt his shoulder so badly that they delayed the production of the movie, so they weren't able to release it for like a couple of months after that. So it was 2006 it got released, I believe, but it was supposed to be 2005. Then, like you said about the Japanese thing, it received the Foreign Film of the Year in Japan. So yeah, like you said, I don't know who in Japan is out here like super stoked on it, but it got the Foreign Film of the Year, so it must have been a dope, the way they portrayed it over there and hyped it up. Good job.
Yeah.
Right, did better over there than it did here. But it was definitely interesting to see. You and I had talked about this, about how communities in the lower socioeconomic status, at that time, especially in the Great Depression, it seemed like a lot of Irish, a lot of poor Irish, a lot of poor Italians, a lot of poor blacks were living, in these little areas with just their communities. So when you have, this Irish man coming from the bottom and boxing, and you see all the grandparents and the family and the cousins and uncles, it's like 3 generations of everybody just listening to the radio box. You and I talked about how difficult it must be to call a boxing match as an announcer, to keep the fans engaged, and also to properly tell them what's happening, because there's so many rights, left, right, switch, left, right, uppercut, boom, 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 and it's just insane nonstop movement for 15 rounds before it changed to 12 rounds. So I thought that was something that was very telling of the times, to see how many people could just all gather around a TV set, or gather around, a radio set. And nowadays, how same thing in my family, we'll have 3 or 4 generations of us all sitting in front and watching a TV game, watching a game on TV. So sports are definitely a unifying force in times of hardship and hurt. And I thought this was a great movie to choose because of what we're going through right now as a nation.
Yeah, those are definitely one of those things that are just so great to listen to and have visuals, and as you mentioned, just be able to bring the family together. And now we sort of have that TV to do it, but nothing's like radio in my mind. I think radio definitely should still continue to have a place for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, Mike, when you look at our current boxing scene and fighting scene, these boxers and fighters, whether they're UFC or all these different options to fight, they make so much more money now because of pay-per-view, right? So many of these fights you have to buy and, get it. So when you look at that, the promoter in this game has gotten a lot of success and a lot more money. Right, they've really stepped it up. So when you look at some of these characters, you look at the promoter. I know it's one of the characters you wanted to talk about. So the promoter in this film, obviously is like our guy that was nominated. But I'm gonna let you kind of take it away from us and tell us how important he was to Jimmy's career, especially in the movie where they kind of hype it up a lot more and make it more dramatic. But obviously, what he did for the film, what he did for the fighter, and kind of what you think overall the promoters helped do for overall boxing, because they're not living in, Hoovervilles anymore.
No, not at all. I think with Joe Gould, Paul Giamatti's character, I think he really had his fighters' his heart. He wasn't one of those boxing promoters, and there was many of them that were just using their fighter to make money, and that's all they cared about. And as soon as that fighter was washed up, they didn't want nothing to do with him. His fighters' his heart. He wasn't one of those boxing promoters, and there was many of them that were just using their fighter to make money, and that's all they cared about. And as soon as that fighter was washed up, they didn't want nothing to do with them, and off they went, and they find another guy who could fight, and okay, let's see what you can do. And it was just, something that wasn't worth anything to them as people. And they were very much brotherhood. And it's so much of a brotherhood that even Joe, promoter-wise, Giamatti had much more money and lived in a palatial apartment. He sold all his stuff just so Russell Crowe can train. And he always said, okay, it's what appearances is what it's about. So
Joe, open the door. Joe, open the damn door. Don't hide in your fancy apartment. I want to talk to you. You are not going to make my husband your punching bag all over again. We are just getting by, and you're taking him from his work like some blood-sucking little leech. and I will not let you get him hurt again like that. Do you hear me? I will not let you!
Guess you better come in. How is it?
Too sweet, per usual.
Really? Go figure. Yours?
Nice, thanks.
Sorry about that. Just don't want folks to see you down, that's all.
I didn't know. I mean, I thought that...
Yeah, no, that's the idea. Always keep your hands up. So... So the last of it 2 days ago. So Jimmy could train.
So I think that was really heart touching because he just didn't treat his fighter as a lot of people did at the time. As far as that's concerned, I know that the fighter Russell Crowe. Why don't you talk a little bit about him and maybe his kid, especially in the beginning, where we see sort of Jim Braddock breaking down and losing his job, and his kid sort of saying, "Okay, I don't want us to go hungry." Why don't you talk a little bit about that scene and some of Jim Braddock?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you touched on before, women weren't really allowed to work much back in the 1930s, right? So it was tough for a family to make money if the husband couldn't bring home any money or food, right? It's just like he was the sole provider. So when he in the movie is out, banned from boxing, he really is down on his luck. And you see the demise of him. He has a broken hand. He's trying to work with the docks. He's really working on his, trying to make as much money as he can. I think in real life, he actually would pull like triple shifts, and then he would go and shovel coal overnight for 60 cents. Like, that's like a real story. It's just like insane the stuff you have to do, right? To make ends meet, to pay the milk bill, to pay off the grocery bill, the doctor bill, all these things. But when you look at his character, you see how proud he is. He's so proud that he won't even, he turns down free salami, right? And for me, being an Italian, free salami, man, I know stealing's bad, Mike, but you give me a stick of salami, oh, man, I can find a lot of uses for that pork, man. I don't eat that much anymore, but oh, boy, you get me excited. So, when you see Jay, the older son, steal a stick of salami, my Italian mind is like, ooh, you start making a lot of things over here. But obviously in the movie, it's supposed to be a teaching moment, pardon me, a telling point. So Jimmy takes him back to the butcher, and I really like that Ron Howard makes sure that they don't show any of the interaction or give you any audio to the interaction between the butcher and Jay. It just shows the butcher yanking that salami back. And then Jimmy brings Jay outside, and they start breaking it down. Hey, this is why you can't do that. We never take what's not ours, right? Jay tries to explain, hey, Daddy, my classmates are being sent away from their parents because they're not being fed or taken care of with heat and electricity because it's so cold here. We're in New Jersey, and it's wintertime. We have to do something. So Jay's mind is survival, and Jimmy's mind is all about doing the right thing and providing for your family. But he's having a hard time providing for that family.
Marty Johnson had to go away to Delaware to live with his uncle.
Why?
His parents didn't have enough money for them to eat.
Yeah, well, things ain't easy at the moment, Jay. You're right. There's a lot of people worse off than what we are. And just because things ain't easy, that don't give you the excuse to take what's not yours, does it? That's stealing, right? We don't steal. No matter what happens, we don't steal. Not ever. You got me? Are you giving me your word?
Yes,
Go on.
I promise.
And I promise you, we will never send you away.
So I think it just goes to show how tough times were. And, it really started to kind of motivate Jimmy to work even harder. I'm sure the Hollywood story kind of hit it up. But, in the movie, that was one of the lower points of the movie where you could really see him like, man, okay, I've kind of hit rock bottom. It's time to, bounce back up now and try to resurface.
Yeah, and I really like that point too, because not only does it show that what a parent should do is correct. I mean, when your kid takes something, especially with what the reasonings were with the child, you want to teach him also that this isn't what we do, regardless of the position that we're in as a family. I thought that was also touching when he tells this kid, I'll never, trade you away. And as we find out later, he didn't do it, but his wife does. And that was something too that was just incredible as far as what they had to go through during that time, is giving up their kids because they can't afford milk. I mean, they can't, let alone electricity and everything else. They can't even, pay the milk bill. So I definitely think that was something that was really poignant and really good in the story. As far as Mike goes, Mike Wilson, his buddy on the docks, what did you think as far as how he did cover it up for him, as far as with the broken hand and those kind of things? What do you think at that time, if it was real life, that Mike would have done that, or do you think that was more movie magic?
Well, I do know that Mike was a made-up character. He wasn't actually a real character. He was just kind of a combination of Jimmy's friends. That's kind of the way that they were able. I think the children of Jimmy, so Jay and those children, the actual children portrayed in the movie, they helped Ron Howard with the movie. So I think they were able to kind of tell like certain people of their friendship. And I think Ron Howard created this Mike character. So I was very intrigued, like the way I thought he was funny, right? He's like, Jimmy Braddock, I used to lose money by a boxer with that name. You would have, he's kind of like joking about like, I used to follow him around and blow all my money on that guy. So it's kind of funny, just for all of us that have messed around, a little bit with gambling and loss, is kind of like a humbling chuckle, like, yep, we've been there and done that. So it made him a relatable character for me. And then also what made him more relatable, Mike, is the fact that he was opposed to Jimmy working with him with a broken hand. He's like, hey, I need this job. Right. I have a family too. Like I get it, man. Like I'm trying to help you too, but like if it's your mouth to feed or my pregnant wife or whatnot, dude, you go hungry. So right away when the manager comes, hey, what's up with your broken hand? And then he sticks up for him. It's like, wow. So 1 second, tells him like, hey, you better hold your own. And then Jimmy's like, I need to hold my own too, or else I'm gonna go hungry with my family. And then afterwards, Mike's able to stick up for him. I really like that. I think Mike was definitely a firecracker, kind of a revolutionary of the times. With all his, not crazy ideas, but his away from the norm ideas and trying to think of ways around government controlling every aspect. And, a lot of different things that are happening then that kind of happen now on a bigger scale. I was kind of just interested to see, the way they portrayed him, because obviously we have a lot of people like that right now with these very radical ideas where perhaps, you agree with A, B, and C, but then D, E, F, G kind of go against your morals. So it's interesting to see characters like that pull you in both directions. Yes, you kind of want to revolt against, everybody living in shanties, but at the same time, what's the proper way to do it? And they show in the movie, he gets trampled. And that was quite the sad scene. So, now that I spoiler alerted it, Mike, why don't you talk about this character? He's such an awesome character, and really brings us throughout this movie. I mean, I know he's not in the full movie because of what happens to him, but for the big chunk of the movie that he's in, you and I always talk about character arc, and I definitely think that he at least helped Jimmy in Jimmy's character arc, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think two things in that. Number one was the way he does help Jimmy, and then also he's not someone. He's not so much like that's outside of the box as in crazy. He definitely has his sensibilities about him. He's just more like, okay, we're not getting anywhere with this, so let's try this. And I thought that was, most of these movies you see, regardless of what the movie is, you see these crackpots that are, sort of outside the box, but they're always way outside the box. They're always like, not only are the governments trying to control us, but they're controlling us with radar from aliens from outer space, And he wasn't like that. He was just a normal dude that was just like, okay, we're in this position. Let's try to figure out how to get out of this position. And I think that's a lot with a lot of us is how do we get out of, say, this situation with the pandemic. Let's look at this and let's look at that and see if we can try to solve it together. The other thing is his behavior towards his wife and how much he contained himself from basically striking out on her, even though he was like drunk and way out of line and all those type of things, and how he talked to Jimmy during the docks and said, hey, no matter what happens, I would never hit my wife. And again, here is a point in a movie where we see far too often that in other movies, Mike would have struck his wife. And then you have a whole thing, and he's just a bad dude and all this kind of stuff. They really maintained him being a really moral guy, I think, a lot more than the common guy, than someone that they really could have took and made him crazy or evil or whatever you see in the common movies, and they bucked that trend. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, he ends up dying in a freak accident. But I think they did a tremendous written work with his character.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was, like I said, I was a big fan of his character, and I thought he added a lot to the film. And definitely gave us a lot to see, when he was not going to strike a woman, and it's in a movie about striking people, right? It's a movie about boxing and fighting, and you see his restraint of boxing as a big moment, right? His restraint of strike, you know what I mean? So I thought that was a good thing that they did to show, kind of build up on his character. They're like, hey, man, I might be a drunk, I might be bad, but, you can't cross that line. And also, when we're looking at, I believe, May, the wife of Jimmy Braddock, right? She was the one that kind of outlawed boxing. As the boxing goes on and on, she keeps telling Jimmy, please get out, stop boxing me. We walked away with a broken hand. We can handle a broken hand. We can't handle a broken head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you break that skull or something happens to that brain. We can't handle that. So you see her at the very end when Jimmy's boxing with his kids, right, having a cute little bonding scene. She's, no more boxing, not in this house. I want you to get college educations. You're going to have professions where you don't have your heads knocked in and bashed in. Right. It's just like a very kids go to bed, and Jimmy had to follow her out and talk to her. Now, Mike, that scene, what she's worried about is talking about, I call him Mad Max because of Max Scherzer, right? And everyone calls him Mad Max now. So when you look at Max Baer and the way that he was just absolutely hammering opponents and just coming down with these thunderous blows that would have killed 2 people already in the ring, and then he keeps, making comments in the newspapers about doesn't want to kill Jimmy and all these things. What do you think he was doing mentally to Jimmy, as a boxer, trying to talk to his family, trying to talk to his wife, and like tell the newspaper he's going to kill their father, and he feels bad for them. What do you think he was doing mentally, and how did you see his character play out through the movie?
So, a couple things. First, I'll talk about the real Max Baer. First I'll talk about the character Max Baer, and then I'll talk about the real Max Baer. Okay, so Max Baer, the character, not only does he kill 2 people in the ring, which was factual, but now he's threatening the life of Jimmy Braddock. And as Jimmy Braddock, I would be freaked out because you're already intimidated. A guy kills 2 people in the ring. I don't care who you are. You're going to be kind of like, and then he tells him the great line, because he's the Cinderella Man, that was his nickname, that people die in fairy tales all the time. And I'm just like, oh man, this guy has it set up for him really bad. And he was just a total jerk. He's multiple women, he's rich, he doesn't care, throwing money around, all that stuff, right? And he's dominating, big hulking dude, just very threatening. And so that scene was when they're at the dinner and Russell Crowe's just like trying to play it off, and then Max Baer steps over the line and starts talking to him about his wife, how his wife is turned on by him, but not by Jim Braddock, but by Max Baer. And why don't you basically, Jim, why don't you go home and I'll just take your wife out and we'll go out on a date and kind of thing. And I really liked the way that May sort of handled it. Didn't, just chuck the drink at him. Very, very classy. And I mean that was a classy move. She could have done, she could have crossed the line. But I think for what he was saying, that was equitable to what was definitely deserving. So, and also the class that Jim took too. I mean, Jim could have just clocked him right there, which is what Max Baer wanted. He didn't want this fight. He thought it was going to be a losing fight. It was going to affect his career, and he'd be done with it, and didn't want the fight. So I think he was kind of also egging him on to sort of disqualify him, and that way he wouldn't have to do it.
Well, if it ain't Cinderella Man.
Thanks for the champagne, Mr. Bear. Doing a great job publicizing the fight, and I really appreciate it. I hope it's going to be a very successful night for both of us. You keep telling people you're going to kill me in the ring. I got 3 kids at home. You know, you upset my family, particularly my wife.
Listen, Braddock, I'm asking you sincerely not to take this fight. Now, you seem like a decent fella. People admire you. I really don't want to hurt you. It's no joke, pal. People die in fairy tales all the time.
Hey, Max, how about a picture? How about a shot, huh? Smile. There you go.
Take it. Just smart.
One more.
Yeah, I think the smart thing would be for you to take a fall. Circus act's over, old man.
Right here. Thanks, boy.
I think I'll go over a few rounds with a dancing bear.
Very good. Okay. Come on. Okay. Hey, we'll see you in the ring. How about that, champ? Yeah? Come on. Let's go, Jim.
Thanks. My wife, May.
You gotta talk to him, May. You are far too pretty to be a widow.
That's not nice, Max. Not nice. Come on.
On second thought, maybe I can comfort you after he's gone.
Hey, I said shut your goddamn mouth, you punk!
Sorry. Send me the cleaner bill.
Get that, boys? Now he's got his wife doing his fighting for him.
Yeah. Ain't she something?
Okay, now let's talk about the real Max Baer. And the real Max Baer was nothing like the character in the movie. The real Max Baer was very classy. In fact, the 2 people that he killed in the ring, he was very apologetic. Went to the hospitals, paid for the bills, paid for the services. Was married, very faithful to his wife. Nothing like the way they portrayed him in the movie. In fact, a lot of the Max Baer family was very upset about the way Ron Howard presented Max Baer because it was so untrue. Also, interesting trivia: anybody who's old enough or seen the Beverly Hillbillies, Jethro is actually Max Baer's son, and so if you ever go back to watch the Beverly Hillbillies, look for Jethro, and that's Max Baer's real son. So anyways, that's basically what I had to say about Max Baer's character. Is you have the real Max Baer and the fake one.
Yeah, and also in real life, the actor, I can't remember his name, the actor that played Max Baer, he and Russell Crowe didn't get along at all in the movie. So when they were
Craig Bierko.
Yeah, there you go. Kind of looks like Clive Owen to me.
He does.
Anyway, right? So it cracked me up because I read a story that said Russell Crowe didn't invite him to his 40th birthday party that was everybody else was invited to on set. So I guess it was such a, I guess he did his job so well as the opponent boxer that he really got into Russell Crowe's head and just, really, really pissed him off. So, yeah, that's something that, is crazy to think about. Now, Mike, when you look at things here, you think about the presidents and you think about promoters and everything. When you look at Jimmy Johnston, what do you think? What does his character bring to the movie? And how do you see that lined up as, commissioners and all these other, kind of head honchos of sports have really started to make their money off of the other players and they're, sitting in a suit watching everything? Yeah,
I think he fell in that gray line. He very much was a businessman. Even in the movie, he says, my heart is for my family and my brains and my balls are for business. And I think that, so he definitely has that business mindset and is going to say, hey, to Jim Braddock, sorry, but rightfully so too. I mean, you can't just hang on to people if they're bringing down your business. As much as you want to be on their side, as much as you want them to succeed, and I think he did want Jim Braddock to succeed, pretty soon you just got to cut your losses. And I think that's pretty much the hand that he was felt was, hey, Jim Braddock is just dragging it down way too much, and I got sustained. And as Mike was saying, hey, you're not going to interfere with me feeding my own family. And Bruce McGill, who played Jimmy Johnson, was sort of that same way. Was, hey, look I have a business to run, and this is what I'm going to do, and showed Max Baer killing, I forget who the fighter was, in the ring, and saying, look this is what you're facing, and I want you to say, okay, look I'm going to give up my life just so I'm protected and you don't come out and sue me. So it was more like, yeah, he was hard-nosed, and he was very much, cutting of fighters and getting rid of them when they couldn't fight anymore. But I think it was more due to the fact that it was a business decision and not someone that was just cutthroat and didn't care.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the business decision, it's kind of funny because when you look at another sports movie he's in, The Perfect Game, which is where have you seen that movie about the team from Mexico that wins the Little League World Series in 1956? Yeah, it's an excellent movie. I highly recommend it. Maybe I'll recommend it for one of ours so we can watch it together and break it down on this. But so Bruce McGill he's like a GM for the Cardinals. Anyway, and he's he's the one that doesn't hire the Mexican coach, and then he ends up offering him a job later. And he's like, hey, it's just business, because the guy was mad he got passed up before. But, it just goes to show that, in all these different movies, he's able to kind of hold, they have him as that stern businessman that runs a sports or a sporting type thing, but always make sure that, hey, man, I got to take my heart out of the equation. It's got to be my brains and my balls, and it's got to be that making decision. A little funny thing, too, he's also in Law Abiding Citizen with Clive Owen, who I thought was the actor in this movie. So that kind of cracked me up as well. There. Yeah, right. And then also he's an extra voice all the time in Family Guy. So I knew I recognized his voice from something. I knew his face and such. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see what Bruce McGill has brought to us. He's
one of those actors that you recognize right away, but you never know like exactly where he's from. But you're like, I know that guy. Well, and then you try to rack your brain on what movies he's been in and all that kind of thing. But yeah, he's one of those that have been in tons of movies that have always. Never really the lead role, but always someone. In fact, he was with Russell Crowe in The Insider as well, which is a great movie.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So yeah, he's been in tons of movies, and as soon as if anybody hasn't seen the movie and you're watching it, you'll recognize him like right off the bat.
Yeah, totally. And then one of the last scenes I wanted to touch on before we kind of start going through some of the other things we liked about this movie. The flashbacks that Jimmy has in the boxing ring, just like the way it shows his children hungry and it shows his children, shivering. I thought that was a very good reminder of the times, just like how quick it would take us from like the boxing where everyone's smoking cigars and throwing money at each other and gambling. And then it goes back to boom, you missed your, $6 PG&E bill. So your kids aren't going to have any heat. Your kids aren't going to be able to have any milk for breakfast, all these crazy things. And I liked how they kept going back and forth, just showing that, cutting in and out as he was boxing. You and I always talk about how these movies, whether it's Major League, making Willie Mays Hayes look faster, whether it was 42, making Chadwick look a little bit better on the base pass, they try to do, maybe perhaps do a better job next time. I thought they did a good job in this movie of every time there was a punch thrown and it was into the face of one of the main actors, it was either slow motion, frozen, or it happened with a flash of a bulb, right? So you'd have a bulb flash. So it wouldn't be like an actual, just like absolute punch. It'd be kind of this, boom, bright flash, and then you see a head snap back. So I thought they did a really, really good job of just making sure that they were able to show, just like, still boxing at the same time, not beating the crap out of these guys and making it obvious that it's an extra in there.
Yeah, and there's some bad boxing movies out there. I mean, even if you go back to like 1950s and then it's almost like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, where you just have these two guys and they're just like, and it's just really, really bad. In fact, Rocky, maybe we'll get to that one day, but Rocky, Stallone, who was a total nobody doing Rocky and everything else, he's the one that sort of started that whole where we see now with Cinderella Man and those really more realistic boxing scenes, is because that's how he wanted Rocky to be. And they originally hired a boxing director to do that. But Stallone's like, nah, I don't want to do that. And the guy's like, I've done this movie, I've done that movie, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, I want it this way. And he's like, I quit. the boxing director just quit right on Rocky. And so with Stallone sticking to his guns, and who was an absolute nobody at the time, transferred that moment all the way to what we see now in Cinderella Man. And as you mentioned, even when we know that Braddock has that broken hand and he hits the fighter in the ribs, and you could see just the light flash, and you just know that anybody that's had sharp pain like that, that's exactly what happens to our body. We just flash, and you can feel the pain. And yeah, absolutely, I think they did a great job with all the boxing scenes.
Yeah, Mike, when you look at things like Rocky Balboa not being as, perfected as it can be in the boxing, I think this movie did a great job. If I could look at my notes here, I believe Corn Griffin, he is a true Canadian fighter, and his name was the Polish Warrior in real life. Lasky is an Olympian for the Canadian boxing heavyweight team. Ansel Hoffman, the trainer, was a boxer before acting. And also they used that the frozen nickel or whatever it was, the frozen coin on his ear to take the swelling away. Yeah. That was from Angelo Dundee, who later went on to train Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Robinson. So it was just like really cool stuff when you see this, when you see like that. So
I knew about the Angelo Dundee when I was watching it. I'm like, that looks like Angelo Dundee. So I looked it up really quick and told my wife all about Angelo Dundee. And then she kept asking me about the quarter. She's like, why are they using a quarter? I don't understand. So I had explained to her about swelling and how much heat goes to the swell. So you want to cool that down so, get swollen so much.
Yeah. And it's just awesome to see that, that was something from a real trainer that worked with Sugar Ray, that worked with Muhammad Ali. And yeah, right. Just what an awesome thing that they did there. Something else too. This is Ron Howard's 17th film. So I thought, like you said, he had some horrible films. He had some good films. This is an idea that took many years to kind of formulate. He talked about it with Russell Crowe on the set of A Beautiful Mind in 2000. So I thought that was something that was very interesting to think about as they go from that type of movie to this type of movie. But it was after Russell Crowe had done Gladiator, so it kind of makes sense. The reason I believe that Ron chose this boxing match or this fighter was because his father had listened to this with his own father. So Ron's father and grandfather, they went together to a pool hall to listen to this boxing match on radio, and that was the first time they had listened to something together. So it became a family tradition to start listening to boxing, and the father, grandfather, son tradition thing kind of happened from there. So I thought that was really interesting to see. It makes sense why he would make Mad Max like a way worse man than he is, try to like really, play it up so that, Jimmy could come off as even more the hero and even more the Cinderella Man. So I definitely, you can see a little bit of the bias, when they see like, oh, if you're making a movie about your favorite, former actor or, politician or sports, figure, it's gonna be like, well, you're going to really make it to their likeness. So kind of like Michael Jordan, the way he's able to control his documentary, right? He's like, all right, not all the ugly stuff is shown, but hey, man, he got to control it. So what do you expect?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We're not going to show me doing this. That's for sure. So, but go with the good parts. Yeah. As much as you can with the good parts, go with that and make me look good. Also interesting is if you look up Jim Braddock, you can see that he kind of does look like a Russell Crowe. And you can get all his like lists of all his fights on Boxing Rec if you or anybody else out there is interested in knowing more about him. Then there's tons of YouTube videos as far as his fights and stuff. So real quick, let's sort of wrap this up. What as far as say the fun meter, so we're sports, movies, and fun meter, overall take of this movie, how much fun did you have out of, say, 0 to 10? What would be your score?
So I think fun, for the current day, for people like us that can't focus for that long, it might not be as fun as you would expect. So I think this is a movie that if you had watched in the past and really grown a love for it, it would be more fun as you watch it more and more. But if you're going to watch it right now, an hour 44 of boxing and, the Great Depression era isn't going to be the most fun. So I think for myself, realistically, I'd give it a 7 out of 10 for fun. I liked it more like an 8 out of 10 for fun, but that's because I've watched it multiple times. I've read the stories. I've read the history behind it. What do you think? What did you do for fun?
I would say it's a good 8. I think the story was really well told. The actors are phenomenal in this. There's chemistry between all of them, and The plot is very well told. I think the big negative to me was Max Baer. I know what they tried to do, but that really kind of turned me the wrong way. I mean, I don't like the fact that you take someone that is really good natured and just make him some kind of just dirtbag.
Monster.
Yeah, and I didn't like that at all. I think they could have made that point very clear in a lot less limited time. You don't have to go on for 20 whatever minutes that is to make him just really bad. Now we got the idea that he's a bad dude just by him killing people. We know he's a bad dude, even though it's legal in the ring. He's a bad dude. He's a dangerous dude. So I should say not a bad dude, but a dangerous dude. So I would say a good 8 would be my fun. Now with the sports movies, since we're sports movies and fun again, sports movies, realistically, how realistic were the fight scenes? We did touch on this to you. What score would you give that out of 10 as far as realistically fight scenes?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be obvious that I'm not a boxer, so perhaps forgive me if I say this, but I think a 9 out of 10. I mean, it looks really realistic. Some of the parts I didn't like was like when Mad Max would like kind of stand them up and then punch them. I don't know how realistic it is to grab someone's head with your open glove and then kind of punch them like that. So I felt like that was kind of a little bit, but yeah, it's the way they had the guys hit the floor, the way they had professional boxers there, so they actually could show like legit people. The way they're showing the rib break through an X-ray, I thought they did a really good job there, and it's just obvious there are a lot of boxing people around.
Yeah. Again, it won for best makeup, so that like the bumps and the bruises and the way they especially the ribs, they didn't overly do it. It looked like real injuries, like these fighters were sustaining real injuries. They weren't, as we've seen in the Rocky movies, one punch and the guy's like balloon face, all these scars and bleeding everywhere. But I thought that the way they moved around the ring, the way they, showed realistic jabs and counter punches and clinching, and it was really, it wasn't just straight out, okay, throw these haymakers and boom, down you go. They showed a lot of true realistic parts about boxing, especially the clinching and those kind of things, and it was exciting. So you got the realistically of boxers and the excitement. So I would give it a good 8.5, maybe a 9. I thought it was really good. So those are my 2 scores. Okay, Neiko, any parting thoughts? Any last hurrahs for this movie before we wrap it up?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great time watching this film. I would give it a 9 out of 10. That's a pretty high score, but I really enjoyed this film. I was able to watch it with my lady who doesn't like sports at all, and with my little brother and his girlfriend who aren't the biggest sports fans either. So it was good to get behind the story, or it was easy to get behind the story, excuse me. I thought it was a really fun movie. There are some biases, here and there that you have to pick through as a consumer of this film. But other than that, I had a really good time. I really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping that a lot of other people get to watch this movie because it's not talked about enough.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think it is one of those movies that really need to be seen a lot more, especially there's very few real boxing movies out there that you have Rocky and basically you have Cinderella Man, off the top of my head anyways, that sort of show those kind of time periods. And
$1 Million Baby or something?
Yeah, $1 Million Baby, which was okay. But, I really think that Cinderella Man really showed some great boxing scenes and had the time period pretty wrapped up. So I'd give it an 8.5. That's just my thoughts. I think you definitely want to watch it if you have a chance. So I think that's it. That's the wrap for sports movies and fun. Like us, rate us, put a message. Hey, even tell us what movie you'd like to see us do. We'd be happy to do that. And for me, for Neiko, everybody else, have a great day. Neiko, take care. Thank you again for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Martin, had a great time. Have a great Sunday. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
All right, Neiko, take care, bro.
See you, man.